consistently believing in young Earth creationism in the United States is just one number, because there are similar numbers to the number for belief in ghosts and paranormal and things like this, right? So there's, and so what can you do about these things? Well, I mean, it really is a matter of science literacy, and I think it's a matter of, I actually think one of our biggest problems is that, frankly, other than panels like this, and Jeff's one teaches some of my kids in school, we have very few opportunities to actually talk about how to coordinate a curriculum and create science literacy from the bottom up. We don't talk to them about what they're teaching, and vice versa. It hardly ever happens. And so I think this is perhaps a structural problem we have with our educational system in general. But science literacy is a really deep problem. Math phobia is a really deep problem. Evolution is a hot button issue on this one because of the specialness of humans and things like this. It really drives from that. But face it, a lot of people don't know very much about how science works or why science works. And this is a national failing, and it goes really much beyond just evolution. We're sort of the pointy end of the stick in a way, I don't know. It's a big one. I personally don't know how to fix it. But.
Well, I think actually this topic of science literacy is that, to me, that's when I was talking about the nature of science, that sort of falls in that same category of understanding, being literate in science. And there are many ways of defining science literacy, but the National Science Education Standards talk about, if students are they understand science at a nominal level and a functional level, so they understand the terms, they understand how to apply them, and then if we can help them understand the process of how science is conducted, they should be, hopefully, graduate from the public school system as informed decision makers. So we're not, the role of people in K-12 education or PK-12 education is not, we're hoping that we've given them the tools so that they can go out and be informed citizens and make decisions using those tools that they've learned about how science is conducted.
I had the unfortunate pleasure of hearing Michael Behe talk out of UNC about a year and a half ago. And one of the striking things about his very slick presentation is that there's very little substance, a lot of flash and very little substance, things that people can flow to and connect to very nicely, but a campaign of disinformation. And so what I'm wondering is, how do you basically counter that kind of approach? Because if you use a logical, argumentative approach, it doesn't work. People get lost, they don't have the background. Our teachers only have minimal training in biology, and so they don't have the background to provide the students. Students are getting basically what amounts to propaganda in their churches, anti-evolution classes. Mike, you were saying everybody needs to learn younger and younger about these things. Kids in preschool are given anti-evolution things. So it's, as you say, a very almost intractable problem that involves a lot of different levels.
I totally agree. It's a huge problem, and I don't see an end in sight in a long, long time. I mean, but it's meetings like this, people coming together and talking about it, I think helps.
One biology class I ever had when I was in public schools, I remember the teacher saying that scores were important, and consequently I didn't even know what evolution was until I was a sophomore in college. And I'm just wondering, assuming I had a child who was in a similar situation, how much influence would I have as a parent if other parents were against evolution being taught in the school system?
If you were against evolution?
No, if I were for it.
If you were for it,
yeah.
You would probably have more power against it, to tell you the truth. To get a teacher to stop teaching something is probably easier than to get a teacher to teach something that they aren't.
I think she's asking it, if she's for it and several are against it, what chance does she have?
Yeah, basically. I don't know.
Yeah, but that
If
doesn't mean you shouldn't try.
yeah,
That's-
Yeah, because there might be more parents out there that support, that have the same opinion and the same position that you do, yeah.
I mean, I would say get started early though, before your kids get there. Because it might take several years to work that out. And it's hard to
I think the story of Dover is actually a really interesting one, and the Nova PBS documentary about Judgment Day that actually really goes into that town and talks to people. I think it probably surprised them all how many of them were actually able to band together. It's interesting for me because I actually grew up not far from there in southern Pennsylvania. In fact, played soccer against Dover High School, high school, etc. And so, seeing pictures of this town, it's like the town I grew up in. And I think I would be equal. I'd be flabbergasted to have a group of parents in our town get together like that. But not only that, they of course ran against the standing school board and won the election. You know, and so I think Nina's point and the point of Dover, I think, really is this thing of if you actually become active in these things and you have standing in the school, like all the plaintiffs are parents, including a couple of the teachers, is you'd be amazed how many people actually want their kids to get a full science education. And that's why I keep saying, if you have standing, go and check it out and stay engaged, because frankly, you may be a much quieter majority than you think you are.
And to be honest, as someone for evolution, I think you have a lot of ammunition. I mean, the reality is it's in the standards. At the end of the day, it's supported by state and federal standards that is to be taught. So I think if you're willing to be loud and maybe a little obnoxious and get past some of the people that might be afraid of ruffling the wrong feathers, I think you actually have a much easier case than you think. I think it might be hard for some teachers to step out and do it if they think that they're going to get anybody upset, but I mean, the reality is the legal side is with you. And a lot of the other sides of it, I think, really do support you. So I actually think you're in a much better place. And I would hope that you would say, I expect my kid to learn this concept. I mean, it's in the standards, you're expected to do this. But it depends on which kind of teachers are teaching too, though, because if you have some teachers that don't believe in evolution, they're science teachers, I know some. It's going to be really tough to get them to teach it. I mean, it takes an enormous amount of money to change what a teacher is doing in legal fees. So it'll be tough.
Yeah, but you know, I'm constantly amazed by this. So, for instance, one of the, as you know, someone who's active running this science education listserv that forwards the NCSE's weekly announcements on, and we have lots of people who follow this thing. We're sometimes come to as by teachers or by parents who say such and such is happening in my school. What can I do about it? And just the information that we can give them. Something about a classic case was a charter school, or sorry, it was a homeschooling network that wanted to teach science and use one of the public schools down in Denver for an after-school program that turned out to be creation science biology. And this woman actually was homeschooling her kid and thought this would be a great thing to do. And lo and behold, put her kid in this and then discovered what the curriculum actually was. And it didn't take very much information to give her to go to the principal of that school and point out some of these, and this was even before Dover, I mean, point out cases of where you guys can get in a lot of trouble using public funds and public property to teach these religious viewpoints, and therefore we should stop it, and they actually did stop it in that school. And so, this information and working is banded together, in fact, is, well, it's as apple pie as American democracy, in fact, and the law is clearly on the side of teaching science in science classrooms and not teaching religion. And I don't know what the record is now, but it's some number in the 20s to 0 on court cases at different levels. Yeah, at different levels. It's at 100%. So it's a.
Yes, I'd like to know how many of the panelists, you guys, are what you would consider atheist or agnostic, and how many believe in God.
I'm very religious. I'm practicing, but I'm not Christian. And so if I go into the classroom, I tell my pre-service teachers, the students in my classroom, that if first of all, the Balanced Treatment Act is illegal. There's no such thing as teaching. I tell them that if you address this as a controversy, there are two sides.